Hey guys, Miss Bergelson again. Miss Manoli and I just wanted to post some clarifications about the foreground, middle ground, background project because it was clear from our Google meeting today and then also questions in the Google Classroom that people were super confused. And I think that's partly just the nature of us, certainly your teacher was getting used to remote teaching. But I think the other thing is that we were trying to kind of show you, like lay it out in little bits so that it would be less overwhelming. But I think it ended up having the reversed impact. So apologies. Anyway, let me show you what the finished product is going to look like, more or less. I'll show you my example. Now, keep in mind that the only part you have to have done for Friday, and it doesn't even have to have color in it necessarily, is the foreground. What I'm going to show you is the foreground, middle ground, background, and then how to attach them. And that is not due until April 3rd. Okay, so this is my interpretation of the Mona Lisa. Voila, separated into foreground, middle ground, background. Okay, so here's my foreground, which is, oh, sorry, that's not too visible. That's the Mona Lisa, right? And you can see in the picture, right, that's the figure, okay? Now, and I wanted to show you. So this is the size of the piece of, in this case, an index card that I cut her out of. So you get a sense of scale, the importance of scale, right? The relative size. So just because intellectually we know, like, oh, people compared to mountains are little, we have to kind of let that intellectual fact out the window so that we can recreate something more realistically. So it's really hard. It's a hard thing to do when you're trying to recreate something, whether it's from art or in nature, getting that sense of scale, because it sometimes plays with our ideas versus our perceptions, and it can be confusing. So look how little space is left, like above her head. So if you look at her compared to that index card, I tried to capture that there's not too much space there. When it came time for my middle ground, which again, this was my middle ground compared to the entire sheet of the index card. And that space that I just kind of browned out there, that's where Mona goes right over it, right? I made a decision when I did the middle ground that I only wanted to have the landscape up to these kind of greenish mountains with this little road and, whatever more reddish dirt that was in the foreground. There's like a little wall here, whatever. There is actually more landscape before the sky. There's actually more trees and there's water and there's like more water. And then that's the only spot of like an actual horizon line where the sky touches the water. But then you do have this where the trees are touching the sky, which is how, like I was saying, how we mostly see horizon lines around here. We're not always just going to see like complete flatness. I chose just to do this for the middle ground. I could have chosen to go all the way to there and have that whole row of trees be the middle ground, in which case my background would have been what? Just sky. But I didn't want to do that because I felt like there was a really clear difference in the way the colors were. So these were much warmer, like yellower colors, and then these were much bluer colors. So that's where I made the split. But you are going to be making your own decisions about how to divide your whatever picture you choose to do into those three sections. And it's really interpretive. It's up to you. I can't say this is how you have to do it, because in life, in pictures, in the world around us, things are not so distinct like 1, 2, 3, right? It's going to be, there's a continuum. So in the foreground, when you are looking at a picture, when you are looking around your kitchen, it's not just like, oh, this chair is the foreground, that table is the middle ground, that's the back. Like there's going to be, oh, well, there's a plate on the table, and then there's, a vase with flowers or a bowl with apples, or somebody's dirty napkin or whatever, and then what comes next. So it's this decision about what do you want to put in the closer area, what do you want to have as your foreground? What do you want to have as your middle ground? And where are you going to define your background? So going back to my pieces. Okay, so I have my 3 pieces. So I could choose, so I did that. So you're gonna have 3 separate pieces that make up your single image, and you're going to literally layer them, okay? And you could just choose to either use a glue stick and glue these down flat, or you could just put like a little piece of tape here to hold them together. But another fun thing, because we're working with this idea of creating depth, is to actually create physical depth. So what you could do, you can take an index card or thicker paper, and you can just cut a bunch of rectangles. They should all, ideally, all be the same length. It's not really super important. But the main thing is that when you fold them, that they're gonna all get folded evenly so that the divisions are the same. So I'm gonna line all my little pieces. I cut 6 for mine, depending on how big yours is and how thick the paper is. You may have to cut more or less and how far you want them to pop out. So I'm figuring I'm going to need 2 for Mona, because I need 1 to hold up her head, 1 to hold up the bottom, and then I actually might need 2 for my middle ground, attaching it to the back. So I have my little flat pieces of paper, okay, and now I'm gonna bend them there, let's say. Okay, and then that's a little bit on a diagonal. I don't know if you can see that. Ideally, it would be a little bit straighter, so I'm just going to try to, it's tricky when you're doing a whole bunch at once, so I'm just going to kind of adjust them there. That's close enough to pretty straight. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I get like a little bridge or a little upside down U. This length doesn't matter, this length doesn't matter, but you want this length, the middle section, to be more or less the same for all of them. That's the part that matters. So now I'm going to take my handy dandy Scotch tape. Yes, I have a very fun dispenser. And I'm going to take a little piece of Scotch tape and I'm going to put it over the non-bridge side, so one edge. And I'm going to line it up right so that crease of that line is right at the bottom of my Mona Lisa, okay? So this part is flush with the bottom. Boop, okay? Now I'm gonna take another one of my little pieces, boop, and I'm gonna glue it, or tape it rather, to her head. And it doesn't really matter which way I do it. I'm gonna do this one facing down, and I'm gonna put some tape there. Okay, now, oh, you know what I just realized? I can't put it that high up. I just made a mistake and learned something from my mistake. You know why I can't put it that high up on her head? Because if I do that, what happens? There's nothing for it to attach to. So I need to make sure that the highest part of the second one is no higher than the highest part of my middle ground. So I'm actually going to do this one the other way. I'm going to attach this to my middle ground. Oops. And now I'll take these 2 pieces and tape them together. So the way I like to do this, and I think I'm gonna have to lift up my phone to show you this. Let's see, I gotta turn it around. Sorry, peeps. Oh, I guess I can't. I'll try to do it this way. Let's see what we see. You're right there with me. Okay, so now I'm gonna line up. Yes, okay. So I'm going to line up that bend in the paper and also try to line up the edges of, in this case, my index card, so they're about even. You can see that. See how fancy I am. And then I'm going to put the tape on. So now when I put them together, it's at the right height. And then this one, I can just sort of fudge my way. La, la, la. So I'm just going to put a piece of tape behind this one and put those pieces there. So now I've got Mona and her middle ground standing up, and now I would just continue and do the same thing for my background. So I'm going to tape this in place, take one last one and put it at the bottom. And again, we're not striving for perfection and scientific accuracy. We're striving for, whoa, this was a cool way to get a better understanding of foreground, middle ground, background. So again, we don't want any of our projects for you, especially during this time, to be stressful, but they should be fun and you should be learning something from them. So here we go. So I taped my bottom one. La la la. Let me show you. Last but not least. Okay. So now you can see my side view, and I'm gonna post pictures of this in the classroom. 3/4 view. Ooh, standing up view. So you're actually having the literal foreground, middle ground, background more clearly distinguished than they would ever be in real life, but just to kind of, just kind of a fun way to play around with this concept. The other thing I would mention is that since we're not getting to do painting, sadly, oh, my phone is mad at me. Close. Okay, that was my low power mode. Since we're not getting to do painting this year, but we will, don't worry. You might want to think about, if you're using color, which you probably want to, really trying to recreate the colors that you see as accurately as possible, which means blending color. So even when you're looking at black, like there's a lot of black in the Mona Lisa's outfit, I layered so many different browns and greens. And I also learned a lot. Like, I never really realized how unbelievably green the sky is in the Mona Lisa. So when I was trying to recreate that, it's not quite as accurate as maybe I would like, but you're seeing some of that. I was trying to capture that, that I was trying to get the specific shades of green in the background as opposed to the specific shades of green in the middle ground. So just trying to layer your colors, another thing to think about. Again, I hope that's helpful. I know I talk a lot, sorry. But that's just so you don't miss me too much while we're apart. Anyway, feel free to reach out to Miss Manoli and me by email, through the Google Classroom, if you need help with any of this. And we're going to have another Google Meet on next Tuesday, the 31st. But if you need one before that, just let us know and we'll set something up. We can even just do like a one-on-one just to help you with whatever you need help with. Okay? Hope that was helpful, and see you soon.